It's interesting when you talk about that. It's like, oh, look at how we used to broadcast.
Well,
Oh, right. I had an overhead light on there. That definitely was my laptop.
Yeah, and even in the video there in the corner there, I have a white light, whereas now I have a blue video light, right?
So we change things around. Look at us.
Exactly. So, and that's part of our growth as doing live streams, right? And our videos and teaching is being adaptable and flexible. When things need to shift or change, we shift or change them, right? We had a really good conversation about that actually this morning with Olivia Crane of Amplified Social on our when we were recording our podcast about that very thing of diving in, just trying stuff. How many people stop themselves because they think they've got to get all this other stuff in place instead of just like diving right in and trying stuff.
Let's say hi to our audience today. You want to go first?
You go first. You go first. Ladies first.
Thank you. Good morning. Actually, it's good afternoon. So you're watching us live here. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Rara, and I like to walk into the room and say, Rara is in the house. I'm broadcasting to you live today from beautiful Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, Canada. I'm here with my awesome partner.
Howdy. I'm Joe, Dr. Energy Piazza, and I'm live in our nation's capital. Canada is our nation. Here in Ottawa, Gatineau, and as I mentioned, it's quite a little bit of an overcast day. I'm just turning and looking out the window, just double checking, and it's quite humid actually today. So I'm later on crank all the fans. But while we're doing the live stream, if I have the fans on too loud, you're gonna hear it. Now, the downside of not having all of the fans on, I've got one on, is it gets a little warm, especially with all the computers going and the lights on and everything. It does get a little warm, so you may see me doing a little bit of this, wiping the brow a little bit as we go today.
I am in an ice cold house. You would think you're walking into a freezer, and that's just to keep me going, keep me awake. So I'm happy to be here today. It does. I'm happy to be here today because we have some pretty important conversation to have. Like, we have a great topic. You tell me when you want to jump right in, because somebody's going to be here for 5 or 10 minutes and I want them to know what they're going to get from us.
So this is a great topic. We should take our own advice, right? We talk about this all the time. Tell people what you're going to teach them, and then tell them what you taught them.
Yep.
So without further ado, to use a cliche, let's jump right in and tell people what we're going to teach them.
Okay, so when you're a presenter and you're networking and you're doing all these different things and you feel a little stressed about it, like, oh gosh, I have to present again, or you're up at night, or if you're one of those people, someone who's really working on trying to get that presentation just right, and you find it stressful and you want to find the perfect word, we're going to talk about 3 points. 3 points to remember. That's it. Keep it very simple. When you give your presentation, these are the questions you should be asking yourself. For your audience, what did you remember? So audience, what are you going to remember from today's presentation from me? This is the question I'm asking myself. That means I want to give you something memorable. Number 2, how do you feel? How did you feel as I was giving my presentation? How did you make yourself feel? Number 3, what are you going to do about it now? Now that you've heard what we've said, what's going to happen? These are the only 3 things in this conversation today that we're going to address. So you might have a whole bunch of other things that you want to tell people, your name and how long you're in your company and what the story led up to and the reason why and the whole think about those 3 things. If you're taking notes, what do you remember? What did you feel? And what are you going to do about it now? Okay, let's get into it.
And this was inspired by, we give presentations all the time and we see things come across our desk, so to speak, and questions that we receive from our community, from you about these very things. So let's jump into the first question a little bit. What do you remember? And I remember you, Catherine, you sent me a link to another presenter. I think it's from, was it Australia or England? I can't remember.
I think so.
Morris is his name. I can't remember his last name at the moment. And he tells the story of being in a live training in a corporate setting. So he had 6 employees of this large business, and they're in a training room, and then all of a sudden he's relating that it got quite noisy next door. And he's asking them, well, what's going on? And they're saying, oh, this is our weekly huddle that the company does, where the executives come down from the ivory towers, so to speak, and they give a State of the Union address, and we all get to go and ask questions and be there. And you go, and it's a huddle, and he goes, I don't know, what's a huddle? So he said to them, would you like to go to the huddle? And they did. So they go next door to this huddle, and it's supposed to be 30 to 35 minutes. And everybody's standing. There's no seats. So everybody's standing the whole time. And it ends up being something like 3/4 of an hour, 45 minutes or so. And the executives are giving the presentation, et cetera, et cetera. And then they go back into the training room, with the 6 employees, and he asked them the 3 questions that Ra mentioned at the beginning. What do you remember? 6 people from a 45-minute presentation. Only one person remembered one thing. And what they remembered was that the executive said that one of their products was doing phenomenally well. But they couldn't remember what the product was or what the metric was to measure what it meant to be doing phenomenally well. So there's a lesson. There's 45 minutes of 6 people standing at a presentation. One person remembered one thing, and it probably wasn't what the company executives wanted them to remember.
I'll share a tip. When I was in La Tip, Kim Marie Branchard, wow, I think I remembered her whole name. There was a guy, I want to see if I have something in front of me to do it. There was a guy who would start a meeting and he would shake something. And I think at that time he did like a box of M&Ms. So he would stand up and he would shake it so it made noise. And this doesn't make noise, so I'm giving you something without noise, but shaking it got people's attention. There you go. So you stand up, so you get people's attention. So what are they going to remember? Well, they might remember you as the person who made a noise and got their attention. And these days, we're doing a lot of digital things. How do you get people's attention? I walk in and I say, "Rah-rah is in the house." That's my opening line. And I could actually say "rah-rah," and the rest of the people in the room can actually finish my sentence because you know what I'm going to say. So I'm predictable with that. That's one way to be remembered. So I walk in very strong with my brand. That's how I walk into the room. So what do people remember? We talked about this, Joe. If someone can tell our story, then we've told our story really well.
Exactly.
How did they meet? Why are they doing this podcast? What is this podcast about? When someone knows that about us, then we've told it over and over again. And if they don't, then in a networking situation or marketing, branding, you want people to know the story. And not so that it's complicated. Keep it simple. When you want to tell the story and you want to tell all the details, I went to Eleuthera. I ran into my husband. I bumped into him. I looked into his eyes. I fell in love. He had saved me. I thought I was being attacked. It was a hummingbird.
Done.
Okay, that's the gist of the story. Now, I can get into it, but once you know the story, and then I'll tell you little bits and pieces over the time. I married my husband 3 times. There's a big love story to that. I dialed 1-800-CLUB-MED. So when you go to tell your story, find the highlights. Don't worry about all those filler words. They're really not anything anybody's going to listen to. So right now, I just told you a story. So we could do it with Be You. We can say, we met at 6:30 in the morning at a networking meeting. We worked together through my company, The Bridge. We decided one day when I was in Salt Lake City that we would start a podcast, and Dr. Energy bought the website, and there we were, 12 o'clock at night or whatever time it was, 2 different time zones. We decided we would go and do it. This is our story. We tell you, one day we said, let's do it. And here we are 81 episodes later. What's the statistics you gave today to Olivia? That was really cool.
So I was watching a video on YouTube with another content creator, and Tom Buck, who does some really great work, and he was doing some research on podcasts, and he found that if you're doing a podcast and you have 28, that's just 28, not 280, not 2,800, not 28,000, 28. 28 downloads of your podcast in the first 30 days of publishing that episode, you are in the top 50% of all podcasters. Let that sink in. You only need to be reaching 28 people within a month to be in the top 50%, the top half of all the podcasters on the planet.
Wow.
Wow.
That was great. That's great information. So here we are, 80 something episodes later, still podcasting and adding live streaming and.
Exactly. And here's something else to think about, that 50%. You're in the top 50% of all podcasts on the planet. You're actually probably even higher than that when it comes to active podcasts, if you're being active with your podcast, defined as at least one episode a month. Because of the something like 8 million podcasts that are out there, something like 50 something percent of them are inactive, meaning they haven't produced an episode within, I think it's the last 3 months. So if you cut that, now you take that 50% of 50%, you're now in the top 25% of podcasters. So
Now think about, sorry, go ahead.
So just the reach that you're having, the connection you can have with your audience, super in-depth.
So I was going to say, now think about that. What do you remember from what we just did? So let's say that was 4 minutes or 3 minutes. What will you remember? Will you remember something about what we just told you? And hopefully more than one of you will. So we know we spoke to at least one of you. We got through to one of you. Okay, let's go to the next point. Like, how did you feel? So let's give some type of reference to that. You want to put that in context, or you want to do something to make people feel something? Because we're good and good.
Sure, just
really good at that.
You jump in.
Okay. So I'll talk about feeling, and I'll use my water bottle as an example. So in here, and there's a filler word for you, catching me using filler words. So in this bottle, I have amazing filtered water, and inside I put some lemon rind and some basil. And when you mix that together, that lemon and that basil really does something magical. Then what I do about an hour later is I throw some mint in it. Okay, that's about 12 seconds. As soon as I mention lemon rind and lemon, like, did you not pucker up a little bit? So how did I make you feel? I gave you a sensory direction. Like,
Experience.
Do you really do that? Right, experience, exactly. Do you really do that? No, I really don't do that. That's nothing is in my water today. I'm just giving you an example. Sometimes I do throw basil, and sometimes I throw lemon in it, and I do put mint in it. There's nothing in it today. That's one way to get the audience to have an experience. How do you make them feel? I could tell a story and bring tears to my own eyes. I could make you feel sad. I could tell you something and make you laugh. My favorite, Sebastian Maniscalco. How does he make me feel? All the time. He makes me feel great. So why don't you give an example, Dr. Energy, because you're really good with that as well.
Sure. I can even take it back to something you're gonna say, oh, you can't do that with statistics. Make people feel something. It's just numbers.
Okay, let's do it. You gonna talk about marriage and divorce?
Nope. I'm gonna go right back to the same podcast information we were just talking about. Are you building your business? Or is your business not connecting with your audience? How does it feel to have information and knowledge that you know could help people, and it's not reaching its target? They don't even know that you're out there. Work with us at BU Network, and we'll have you in the top 50% of your category, connecting with your audience, so you can reach more people and make a bigger difference in their life. How does that make you feel?
Sign me up. Love it.
So, when we go into a presentation with the intent of having people remember something, having an experience, an emotional experience, a sensory experience that they can feel and get in their body, not just see it and hear it, but feel it deep in their body or in their heart or somewhere else in their body. You might feel it somewhere else. You might feel anxious. You might feel it in your stomach. It depends what the feeling is that you're feeling. When you create your presentations with that intent, you are more likely to connect with your audience because you're keeping their goal in mind rather than making the agenda about you.
I'll do a little lipstick demonstration. Tastes like passion fruit. Maybe it's dragon fruit. Tastes yummy. And it plumps your lips. And there's a sheer color. You can sort of see the color. You can see how much I use it. I'm putting that lip serum on. This product is by my side in every color because I love what it does. And I love just doing a 5-second demonstration of putting that on, and then you see it, and you see that it lasts. So the question about what do you remember? And the question of what did you feel? Lead me to this question. What are you going to do now about the information that I just told you? You may want to buy that or ask me about it. You might want to go and take that action. And that's important. What are you going to do? It's your choice, your decision. It's not me telling you what to do. It's what are you going to do with that information? What are you going to do with the podcast information? What are you going to do about that amazing infomercial that Dr. Energy just gave you? Are you going to say, well, let me find out if I can do that? What if you want your presentations to be pointed and directed at the right audience so that you're saying the right thing to the right person? You can never say the wrong thing to the right person. So if you're in a room, I'll give you a really funny example. Let's say you're speaking to a bunch of people who want to weight train and they're really thin and underweight and they're just trying to gain weight. That's the reason why they're there. They're there because they want to gain weight. And you walk into the room and you want to lose 25 pounds. And you start talking to these people. You may not have credibility. You just may not. So people will make a decision or they'll make a distinction as to who they're going to listen to. So once you have trust, Olivia said this today, so brilliant. Once you have trust with the people that you're in the room with, you can actually say what you want to say as long as it's coming from heart center and it's value packed. And that audience will do what you say. So what are you going to do with the information now based on speaking to your target audience, speaking to your avatar, and speaking to people who trust you? That's really important. So if you're talking to a room full of people that cannot relate to you, I use the skinny overweight thing just because it's visual, or you're not speaking the language. It doesn't even matter. I ran a business and didn't speak the language. You could think about how do you connect, and if you can make that connection when you're on Zoom, when you're face to face, make the connection.
Right.
Do what you have to do to get to that person. I know you want to say something, Dr. Energy. Tell us.
I was just going to agree with you about being able to make that connection with people. And sometimes the language isn't necessary. I remember in a coaching program with other chiropractors, and we were doing role playing. And some of us were speaking English. There were Europeans as well as people from the local area here and from Quebec. So French was their first language. They could do it in English, but because their practice was in French, the role playing was more effective for them to do it in French. So, and then we had people from Switzerland, so they were doing it in Swiss or German, or some Italians, so doing it in Italian because it's their first language and that's how they ran their practice. And at first, we used to try to get the group set so that you were speaking your own language to each other. And then we realized that it didn't matter. When we were role playing, when you're connecting with the person in front of you, the role playing, and you're giving them all of your focus, the language doesn't necessarily matter. It's the connection that is happening, and communication, which can be separate from language, was still occurring. And what I found personally was, because I do have some training in French, I took French for many years in school, and I heard Italian growing up a little bit from grandparents, but my ability to speak it or really understand it wasn't very high. In those moments when we were really connected and doing that role playing, I understood perfectly the message that was being communicated. And the message was that this person cared about me, cared about where my goals, my health, my well-being, and that where I wanted to go with my health and what I wanted to achieve. And that's all I needed to know. And that's really where we make our decisions. Just remember this. I'm going to specifically give you something to remember right now. When we are speaking with people, and we make a decision about buying from somebody or purchasing something, every single decision that we make is emotional. It comes from a place of emotion. And we make up a story in our mind afterwards in order to make it sound logical, to make it rational. We generally actually do not make decisions from a place of logic. And neuroscience research has actually shown that we actually non-consciously have made a decision up to 10 seconds before we're even aware that we've made a decision. And the areas of the brain that light up when we've made that decision are the emotional centers of the brain. So just know that every decision you make is going to be made from an emotional place, and that's okay. And then we apply the logic, the thinking, the mental aspect to it afterwards.
Right. So that being said, when you're giving a presentation, knowing that this is what's going to happen, you can talk about all the statistics like we did in the world. But if you give one statistic and more emotion, you're probably going to make a quicker connection.
Exactly. And if you start overwhelming people with all those numbers, or in one and out the other,
they tune out.
they do.
They definitely tune out. So are you saying that when we give a presentation, you mean we should keep it simple?
Keep it simple, smart guy.
All right. Don't tell everybody everything in 3 minutes. We'll talk about 3-minute presentations, sure. Right? Because we did that. We did this whole series. It's going to be in our
video on that. Yep.
Right. And we have that. We were just talking about that yesterday. So if you have a 3-minute presentation, there's a structure of what you can do in 3 minutes. There is only so much you can do in 3 minutes. There's only so much I can tell you. And as I breathe and think and process, you need to breathe and think and process as the listener. So highlight the points that you're going to make so that you have a fun closing, a call to action that's almost evident. What are you going to do with the information that you have today? How will you take better care of your health? How will you create a better presentation for your audience? When you think about that, you're already wrapping your head around, I'm going to get with them. I'm going to have them teach that to me. Just, answer a question if you can. So the point is, keep it simple. If it's 3 minutes, if it's 5 minutes, even if it's 10 minutes, just keep it simple times 2. Like, don't complicate it. Don't add 3 times as much information because you have 2 more minutes. It's just not going to work. People will not think you're a good storyteller if you tell them everything. They will think you're a good storyteller if you say things that they can remember and relate to. One thing I want to mention is when you're speaking, you may get nervous and you may do the and so. We're all human. What I encourage you to do I invite you is to think about your story and know it. Know in your heart of hearts what you're going to say. Because if you need to check and it's a story about you, then I question the validity of that information. Unless it's a date or a statistic, and so what if you get
Quote or
it
something like that. Yeah.
right? A quote, more importantly, because I could tell you it was September 16th, 2009 that I joined something. And if I'm off by a day, but yes, I shouldn't have to check that.
Right.
As long as I am flowing with my words and you can listen to them, record yourself, and you can hear that smooth conversation, you're more apt to stay with me. You're not going to stay with me if I go back and forth, if I jockey around in my conversation, if I sort of run you around the mill, if I don't give you a timeline to understand. Let me tell you, oh, just a minute. Oh, and I forgot to tell you. Okay, forget it. We're getting out of that car ride. That's not fun.
Right.
So think about being smooth. That helps.
Do you remember? There was a commercial. Now our American friends may not quite get this, but they might. There was a commercial back. Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna date myself a little bit. Probably 30 something years ago, for a beer here.
There was
in
TV
Canada.
back then?
There was TV back then. Yes. And the beer was a particular beer, and their tagline was "smooth as," and it was the name of the beer. And they always had in the commercials, they told really good stories, and there would often be a twist where somebody would like goof up, and the tagline would be, "Oh, you're smooth, son, smooth as," and the name of the beer. And so it was a lot of fun. So you can tell, and that they don't even make that beer anymore. That brewery still exists, one of the biggest ones in Canada, and but that particular label of beer doesn't exist anymore. And I still remember the commercials and how they made me feel and how much fun they had with them. And so this is the power of taking that person on a journey. If you don't know how to tell a good story, there are courses out there you can take on how to tell a story. There are frameworks out there on how to tell a good story. And maybe this is something that our audience would like to hear from us. Give you a framework of how to tell a story so that you can connect with your audience more easily and deeply. Because if you're jumping around, oh yeah, as Art said, oh, I forgot to tell you this, oh, I forgot to, let me, oh, just jump. We all know family members who tell stories like this, and it's like, oh my God, it takes 40 minutes to tell a 5-second story because they're jumping all over the place and you can't follow them, and it's mentally, it's like, oh, I just finished the damn story already. So if you can tell a story and connect with people, that's what's important. Be present with them. Be in the story with them as you're telling it. That's where the relatableness, if that's even a word, and as
it is
our
now.
BU network community knows, I like to make up words as I go along. So relatableness is a big factor in people connecting with us and giving people the opportunity to find us relatable. If we never give the opportunity or create the circumstances to be relatable, you never have a chance. I'll tell you a great story that relates to this. I was watching the movie the other night, Hitch, with Will Smith and Eva Mendes. Do people remember this movie, Hitch? And Will Smith's character, they call him the date doctor. And people think that, oh, it's manipulating, it's etc. But really what he was doing was creating the opportunity for two people to meet that otherwise might not be able to meet or have enough in common or can't get out of their own way to meet, to see the other person for who they really are. And once you do that, then you step back and you let nature take its course. So being that relatable, creating the opportunity, the circumstances for your audience to find you relatable creates an opportunity to go further, to build the relationship. You don't have to try and do it all at once.
Right. I remember that movie, and I'll apply this to a networking situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're giving people 3 minutes of your time and you're asking them for 3 minutes of their time, what do you want them to know about you? I want people to know my brand, rah, 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 rah's in the house. I want them to know where I'm from. I'm from New York. And I want them to know that I have a love story. So if I say rah-rah's in the house, you might hear my New York accent slip out during the course of this conversation. I just want to let you know that I'm very passionate about love stories. If I can say those three things and you remember them, it does not matter if I'm selling you this water bottle. It doesn't matter if I'm selling you airtime. It doesn't matter if I'm pitching you to be on our podcast or in advertising, buying advertising time. It doesn't matter as long as you can relate to something about me.
Right.
And it's clear and it's easy. Some people say, don't mention this and don't mention that. Be you. Mention who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Simply look at the clock. If it's 3 minutes, take 10 seconds and let your entrance be slow.
Right.
Give it a minute before you say anything, or give it 30 seconds or 10 seconds and get people's attention. Like, isn't she supposed to be speaking? I thought she was going to talk. What's happening? You can get people's attention by shaking that box of candy or by being present. It's still part of your 3-minute presentation. They'll remember you.
Exactly.
You like doing that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 1 second.
Good thing we have mutes on our mics.
The mute button is very handy, the cough button. So speaking of keeping our eyes on the clock, let's just recap what we said we were going to teach people. This is part of the strategy. We said 3 questions. What is your favorite color? No, that's another 3 questions from a different something different. What is the average airspeed velocity? No, still not the right question.
Different show.
What do you remember? That's the first question. The second question, what did you feel? And the third question, what are you going to do about it? So we told you what we were going to teach you. We were going to teach you the 3 questions. We taught you about the 3 questions. What do you remember? What did you feel? What are you going to do about it? And now we're telling you what we taught you, which was the 3 questions. What do you remember? What did you feel? And what are you going to do about it?
Awesome. It's that simple.
It's that simple.
It's that simple. Talk about that a minute each in your presentation or 45 seconds each. And if you cover those 3 topics, you're good.
I'd like to to wrap up, put a nice little bow on this topic. I'd like to give people one little bonus tip about those 3 questions. It's not an extra question, but it's a little strategy that you can actually use with these 3 questions. What do you think?
Why not? Let's go for it.
Let's go for it? Okay.
Yes.
So one of the things that you can do with these 3 questions, especially if you're doing it in like a breakout room or you have a webinar that you're doing, is at the end of your presentation, ask your audience right there on the spot. What do you remember? What do you remember? What do you remember what we just talked about? What did you feel about it? Or what did you feel? What did you experience as a result of my presentation? And 3, what are you going to do about it? What action are you going to take as a result of hearing this new information? And stand back, give a moment, a pause, and allow them to tell you what they remember, how they felt, and what they're going to do about it. And this is where the title of this talk came from, about keeping your sanity. This is the sanity check on your presentation. How to know that you are giving the information that your audience is looking for. Because if they don't remember what you said, they didn't feel what necessarily you maybe wanted them to feel, or they felt something different, you need to know that. And what action are they going to take? If they're not really going to take an action, then what the heck was the whole point of this? Now, this can be a little bit tough on the ego sometimes, especially at the beginning. And it's going to help you hone your presentations. Because the truth is, in a network meeting, when you ask somebody, how did you like the presentation? What's the standard response?
It was great. You're so fantastic. I loved it. You were amazing. And it really was terrible.
And it was terrible, but are they going to, do you think somebody in a networking meeting, somebody who wants to be a business associate of yours or wants you to refer business to them or vice versa, do you think that they're really going to tell you what the presentation was really like if it wasn't very good, or if they were
Only if
bored
they
by
ask me
it?
or you.
Yes, you or I would, well, we would, but we would do it, and we would do it in a way that helped you grow from it as well. And I always ask people, when they ask me that question, what kind of feedback are you actually looking for? Because if you just want platitudes that, oh yeah, it was great, blah, of course people are going to tell you that because they want to encourage you to speak again. And this is part of how what we learn in Toastmasters is how to give effective evaluations, effective feedback. It's not criticism. It's feedback on what we heard, what we saw, what we felt personally, and what we remembered. So learning that, how to do that, is super important. And we can go into a whole other topic, whole other discussion on that.
Love that. Those are great points. I love that we're going to cover 3 points. You can take those 3 points, you can write them down, you can put them on stickies, you can put them right in front of your computer, put them on a wall. Remember them when you're doing your networking talks for a minute, for 3 minutes. Just think about those 3 things at all times and switch up your conversation. Like, you don't have to say the same thing all the time because it sort of gets boring. You might have your brand, right? So you walk in with part of it, 10 seconds, 15 seconds of a minute could be the same thing that you say, but then keep your messaging clear and change it up because maybe you're in a room full of women or a room full of men or a room full of millennials or a room, whatever, whoever you're talking to, make sure that the message is relevant. Keep the information relevant. Thank you, Dr. Energy. I thought this was a great topic for today. I took notes myself because there are times that, I get on a little long-winded too. So I want to shorten it, keep it short and sweet.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you so much to our audience and our guests. And Dr. Energy, once again, it's a pleasure.
To do my old something from the 80s, you guys will appreciate this.
You crack me up.
A little Benny Hill for everybody. Fun stuff. Okay. See everybody next week.
Have a good day. Yeah. Ciao.